All right, y'all. Welcome to another exciting edition of This Week in Space. I am your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell. I'm an astrologer, tarot reader, and a licensed mental health counselor. And today I'm coming at you all from the studio of Serban UNESCO, great artist, sculptor, designer, furniture maker. And I've been visiting him, and he was kind enough to let me use his studio to drop this report. Coming at y'all a little bit earlier than usual, but neither rain nor sleet nor snow nor ninth house long distance travel will prevent your weekly wizard from his weekly appointed wizarding rounds. So, with all of that said, I'm going to just kick this off and jump into the astrology of the week because we've got a ton of stuff going on in space and it's going to take a minute to get through. So buckle up, my friends, and away we go. We are looking at This Week in Space for September the 15th, 2025 through September the 21st, 2025. This week will be culminating in our second and final eclipse for this eclipse season. These eclipses have been occurring in the Virgo Pisces axis, and this one is a partial solar eclipse occurring during the Virgo new moon. This will be happening on Sunday, September the 21st. We'll get there when we get there. But first, there's a lot of movement that's going on in these celestial spheres that is sort of leading up to the culminating moment of the eclipse. Oh, also, before we get this all kicked off, I would like to give a big shout out to the good people at Club Mate for making such a tasty, caffeinated, non-alcoholic beverage. Love this stuff. And if anybody knows one of them and can get me a sponsorship, I would much appreciate it because, oh, this is my favorite beverage in the world and it's really difficult to get in America. Anywho, that being said, kicking us all off today, Monday, September the 15th, we have Venus in Leo in a supportive sextile to Mars in Libra. This is going down at 25 degrees and 51 arc minutes. So, my friends, Venus deals with themes of relationships, aesthetics, and pleasure, whereas Mars is all about direct action and kind of going after what it wants. These two planets are forming a supportive sextile, which kicks off this week in space. Currently, Mars is moving through Venus's sign of Libra, where Mars is in detriment. In Libra, which is a sign that deals with harmony and balance and diplomacy, Mars is a tad bit under-resourced and kind of out of their depth. Right? Mars wants to go and have their way and is really willing to fight for what they want. And in this supportive sextile, which, by the way, is an aspect that is associated with Venus, Venus is kind of helping Mars to learn the lessons of Libra, how to use diplomacy and how to create win-win situations instead of just kind of charging in and making an utter mess of things. Mars finds connection through conflict, and Venus can help sort of soften this approach to relationship and assist Mars in learning to balance their desires with the needs of others instead of just pushing people around until they get their way, which is sort of how Mars shows up intuitively. On the flip side, Venus and their sign of Libra can be a little conflict averse and can sort of fall into people pleasing tendencies in order to ward off our arguments and keep the vibe right. Venus can sort of abandon, or Libra especially can kind of abandon their needs just to make sure everybody else is okay. And if everybody else is okay, then I'm safe and I'll be okay. But in this sextile, Mars can kind of teach Venus how to stand up for themselves and to practice honoring their desires, even if it means stepping on some toes sometimes, as well as defending their boundaries, which Venus and Libra might get a little squishy around the boundaries sometimes. Lastly, Venus and Mars in a harmonious aspect like this can make a really great team. Venus tells Mars, "This is what I want." And Mars is like, "Oh, baby, no problem. I'm gonna go out and get that for you." And then Mars kills it and drags it back. And Venus shows Mars how to really take pleasure from it and really enjoy what Mars has brought back. So, with this in mind, this is an opportunity to consider the things that we might want consider consider the things we might desire this week and to practice taking action to go after what these desires are while remembering to use Libra's skill of good communication and diplomacy and to create win-win situations wherever we can. And once we have gained access to whatever it is we are going after, we can practice the fine art of enjoyment and really take pleasure in what we've achieved. And so in Greek mythology, uh, Aphrodite, Venus, and Ares, or Mars, were lovers. And even though Aphrodite was married to the smith god Hephaestus, she kept up a long and kind of torrid love affair with Ares, or Mars. The product of their union was Eros, which is the force of love and attraction. Uh, Eros was imagined as the one who lit the fire of love in the hearts of both gods and mortals. And so Eros kind of alivens us and wakes us up to the energy of life that courses through us and courses through the world. And this is the erotic as a force and a life force, which has been sort of pushed into the realm of the sexual, but I think it's much broader than that. It's kind of anything that lights the fire of love in our hearts. And it's anything that pulls us into attraction and anything that brings aliveness and wakes us up to the power of life that courses through our bodies and through the world. So, as Venus and Mars perfect their sextile aspect, there's the opportunity for Eros to be born and the erotic to kind of come into form. And so Audre Lorde has this great essay on the erotic called Uses of the Erotic is Power. And I'd like to just read a couple paragraphs from it because I think it's really on point and she's a great writer. And it also kind of illustrates what I mean by the erotic and how that energy might reveal itself during this aspect between Venus and Mars and how this erotic energy might help to carry us through the week. So this is Audre Lorde. The erotic is a measure between the beginnings of our senses, of our sense of self, and the chaos of our strongest feelings. It is an internal sense of satisfaction to which, once we have experienced it, we know we can aspire. For having experienced the fullness of this depth of feeling and recognizing its power, in honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. It is never easy to demand the most from ourselves, from our lives, from our work. To encourage excellence is to go beyond the encouraged mediocrity of our society. Uh, uh, and this is to encourage excellence. But giving in to the fear of feeling and working to capacity is a luxury only the unintentional can afford. And the unintentional are those who do not wish to guide their own destinies. This internal requirement towards excellence, which we learn from the erotic, must not be misconstrued as demanding the impossible from ourselves nor from others. Such a demand incapacitates everyone in the process. For the erotic is not a question only of what we do, it is a question of how accurately and fully we can feel in the doing. Once we know the extent to which we are capable of feeling that sense of satisfaction and completion, we can then observe which of our various life endeavors bring us closest to that fullness. And I think this really speaks about the energy of desire and the way it can motivate us into action, as well as the appreciation of our senses and our feelings and ourselves and what we want to build and what we want to create in this world and how we can move beyond the sense of mediocrity or the norm of society in order to really honor our ability to create and our ability to be in alignment with that life force. And it reminds us to honor not only our drives and what we are able to accomplish, but the lived experience of those desires and the feeling sensations that occur and help kindle that fire of love in our hearts that Eros lights for us. Not just for a person or a partner, but for what stirs the passions and motivates us to act. And it reminds us to take time to warm ourselves by that fire that burns in our hearts, that Eros has lit for us, and to tend that fire with loving care and to continue to feed it and not exhaust it in the quest to produce or to please or stamp it out due to the fear that it is too much or too powerful or because we are afraid that it might make other people feel uncomfortable. So, moving right along, my friends. Tuesday, September the 16th. Venus in Leo trine Chiron, retrograde in Aries. This is occurring at 26 degrees and 12 arc minutes. So on Tuesday, we have another supportive aspect from Venus and Leo, this time to Chiron, who carries the unfortunate moniker of the wounded healer. Wah, wah. So Venus and Leo wants to let their love light shine, but Chiron can feel a little uncomfortable being seen or putting themselves out there. Chiron carries with them the scars and scabs of all of our past wounds, and they hold the Rolodex of stories of past disappointments and heartbreaks and unmet expectations. And for those of you too young to remember what a Rolodex is, it's the contact lists in your phone, but in a analog paper form where you spin it and it gives all the names and contacts that now we keep in our digital devices. And Chiron keeps all of our wounds and hurts in this catalog that they draw on. And so, with this harmonious trine, Venus can help Chiron remember the times where things actually did work out and where we found connection, where we were able to be ourselves, and where we were met and seen and didn't experience the sting of rejection, which can be hard to remember because human beings have a negativity bias where it's so much easier to remember all the times where things went wrong, but we have to like really sit in the remembering for the times when things went right. And so Chiron can really carry this story that they are too much or not enough. And this supportive trine poses the question, what if we were just right the way that we were? What if we didn't have to perform or shrink to find connection? Chiron holds a lot of wisdom and knowledge from past experiences. They have learned a lot from their past wounds and the ways that they have managed to get by and to maintain. Chiron reminds us that the challenges we have lived through have helped us to access valuable resources and to learn skills and techniques that allow us to be in better communication with our inner world and can be of great benefit to other people. Chiron was the child of Saturn and a nymph Philyra. But although he was of divine parentage, he decided not to live with the immortals up there on Olympus, but to live in Middle Earth with us in a cave on Mount Pelion. And think about Chiron's cave a lot. Chiron's cave contains all of his herbs and potions and medicines and all the resources that he has developed to both heal himself and those that come to him seeking remedies for their ailments. His cave is also where he hides out and kind of bed rots or goes into goblin mode when his own wounds become activated. And so in this trine, he is visited in his cave by Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, who reminds Chiron that love is a fundamental principle of the universe, that it is the power of Venus and her child Eros that help hold everything together, not just human relations like families or communities or romantic partnerships. The power of attraction is universal, and it appears in the form of gravity, which holds the planets in their orbit around the sun and holds everything together to the surface of this Earth. Venus reminds us that gravity and our connection with the Earth is secure attachment, and that we are always held by this constant principle of attraction. And so you can practice this recognition of secure attachment right now by just feeling your body in the chair, your feet on the ground. Maybe just relax for a moment and feel the pull of gravity holding you and that sense of connection with all the points of contact that you are experiencing in this moment. And as we tune into these sensations, we get to experience Eros. the child of Venus and Mars, which is where we get this term erotic. And again, this term has been sort of relegated to the bedroom in modern times and isn't considered very much outside of the realm of carnal relations, but it's much bigger than that. Eros is the appreciation of life, and in many ways, life force itself. It's the recognition of the senses and the feeling of life we get through the activation of our senses. And so, just tuning into the sensation of all of these points of contact and connection can help us to remember the feeling of aliveness through our sensual experience and our feeling of connection, even if it's not with another person, even if it's just, your arm on your leg or on the armrest, your body in the chair. And this is the wisdom that Venus brings into Chiron's cave. The erotic as independent from sexual interaction, but as a reminder of the intimacy with the living world, which is constantly available. And if we can crawl out of the old stories of loss and lack and open ourselves to the experience of connection and the wisdom of our senses, Venus in Leo really helps to shine a light on the remedies and medicines that Chiron has collected that are so easily doled out to other people in their times of need, but that Chiron may have really forgotten to administer to himself when he kind of spirals out and goes into one of these old stories when one of these old wounds gets activated. And Chiron can help Venus remember the wisdom that they have accumulated from past experiences in order to help us to tune into our authentic self and to remember that we are enough, however we show up. And so, also on Tuesday, September the 16th, we have Mars in Libra opposing Chiron in Aries. So moving from a supportive aspect from Venus into a little more challenging aspect from Mars. And so right after this Venusian trine, Mars comes in to oppose Chiron. And an opposition is sort of like a tug of war where we may feel pushed and pulled in different directions. Chiron feels this core wound activated, and Mars really wants to take action to do something about it. And so when this is unconscious, this energy can manifest as being hurt and feeling bad about it and being upset about it, and then going and taking it out on somebody else or something else. Stubbing your toe and then punching something, or having a bad day and yelling at somebody. And so we see this unfolding in America with the killing of Charlie Kirk and the sort of aftermath of this assassination with calls for vengeance and retribution, this tension between Chiron, our unhealed wound, and Mars, the drive to act. And this is what perpetuates the cycle of trauma. And this is why hurt people hurt people. And with this opposition, it's important to kind of slow down and consider what is going on in our internal landscape. What old stories or feelings are getting stirred up? We might even consider our physical posture and how these stories are living through our bodies. What shape are we embodying? When we feel that like pain or feel that hurt, there's like the tendency to curl up and to sort of protect our heart and protect our organs. So, how do we slow down and notice what is coming up in our bodies and coming up in our internal worlds instead of just reacting and lashing out? And where Mars and Venus's child is Eros, or this idea of life force and passion and desire that lights the flame of love in our hearts, Mars's children are Deimos and Phobos, fear and panic. And when our core wounds get triggered, it can unleash Mars's kids who would accompany him onto the battlefield. The story that trauma tells is, I will never let this happen again. Absolutely no way. And so when our wounds get stirred, that story gets kicked into gear and we experience the fear and terror that this time will be like that other time. And then our Mars kind of leaps into action to do whatever is necessary to protect us and to prevent us from being hurt. This can pull us into a fight or flight or freeze response based on our past experiences. And this happens almost instantly. It goes, our amygdala sets off an alarm, our body goes into fight or flight or freeze or fawn, and it takes a little bit of time to slow down and allow the prefrontal cortex, which is our decision-making part of our brain, to come back online. And so, um, Mars can even decide to be proactive and sort of lash out to do to others what we are afraid will happen to us or that others will do to us before we are put in a position where we can be hurt again. Mars says that the best defense is a full-on assault, and I'm ready to go. And so it takes a moment for Mars to like chill out and kind of quiet the war cries. So if we get activated or hijacked by Phobos and Deimos, fear and panic, we can slow down and take a moment to allow our frontal cortex to come back online so we can make skillful decisions and respond to situations instead of just reacting or lashing out or going to battle. With Mars, it can be helpful to move the feelings through our body with movement, shaking, physical exertion. This can help release some of those feelings of activation. It can help us to clear our minds and clear out some of those stories from the past that our wounds might be telling us. And it can help us to come back into a more grounded place so we can respond from a place of awareness instead of just reacting from our core wounds that are being activated or triggered. Great. So we moved through Tuesday. How's everybody doing out there? Excellent. I love it. Moving on to Wednesday, September the 17th. We have Mercury in Virgo opposing Saturn retrograde in Pisces. Here we have another opposition and another sort of tug of war occurring. But this time it's between Mercury, the planet of communication and cognition, and Saturn, who is just retrograded back into Pisces. So Saturn deals with constriction and limitation and pressure. Saturn is heavy and may lend itself to occupying us with weighty thoughts or the need to have challenging conversations. Saturn reminds us to do the difficult things that we don't necessarily want to do. We may find ourselves kind of bogged down in some serious thought midweek. Traditionally, Saturn was associated with the melancholy or melancholic temperament. This is kind of a depressing vibe where we may feel like withdrawing from the world and engaging in solitude and doing some really serious thinking or pondering thoughts that might feel quite heavy. And, traditionally, the melancholy temperament or this idea of melancholy produced a lot of art, produced a lot of poetry. And so there is a benefit to it, but it feels heavy and kind of depressing. But, great art and great poetry has come out of depression. And I think about the epidemic of male loneliness as the melancholic, which traditionally was dealt with by like these lonely men writing poetry, which was great, and now they're all podcasting, which I'm like I think is kind of sus. And I guess I'm also a podcaster, which also arguably is kind of sus too. But I don't feel very melancholic about this. And I hope I'm bringing something beneficial into the space. Anyway, the melancholy vibe is kind of a depressing one. And we may feel like withdrawing from the world and just like deepening our thoughts into ourselves. Mercury in Virgo is sort of about systematizing information so that it can be put to practical use. Oh yeah, and the epidemic of American loneliness, which I think is also pretty Saturnian. I think America has become a pretty Saturnian place, and like people have become very separated from connection and sort of locked in their own worlds. Which may lead to some creativity developing, but it can be kind of depressing while you're going through it because I think that human beings need connection. And so, with Mercury and Virgo, it's about systematizing information so that it can be put to practical use. And here, Mercury's thought processes are interested in real world application and not just abstract thought or flights of fancy. And so this opposition provides an opportunity to examine the systems that we have created for our lives. Maybe the reasons that we are experiencing this epidemic of loneliness. Saturn is interested in building things that can withstand the test of time. And with this transit, we can consider the ways in which we may need to reconsider or edit some of the systems that we have been working within in order to create a more enduring structure that we can operate in moving forward. And that can help us to have more of what we want. This is a time of really examining the ways in which our lives are functioning. What are the structures or stories that we have been living in or living out? We want to examine these with the discerning and keen critical eye of Mercury and Virgo and really consider if these frameworks are functioning in that in a way that will support what I am working towards. Are some of these superstructures outdated, or were they developed in response to specific times or situations, and have they maybe outlived their purpose? Is there a better way that we can operate moving forward? Are there some things that no longer serve me that I can let go of in order to move into new territory? Are there new routines or practices that I can implement that will support me in becoming the person that I want to see myself becoming and may help me achieve the goals that I have set for myself? It's also important to remember that this opposition is happening very close to where Sunday's solar eclipse will be occurring. Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, where the eclipse is happening, and Saturn will be opposing the sun and moon during the eclipse. So, this Mercury Saturn opposition may be introducing themes or ideas that can help us to better understand the energy of the eclipse and some of the endings and beginnings that are being activated as we continue to navigate this eclipse portal. So, moving right along to Thursday, September the 18th. Mercury enters Libra. So Mercury will be in the Venus ruled sign of Libra all the way until October the 6th when they enter into Scorpio. Right after Mercury perfects their opposition to Saturn, they'll enter Libra. We've got a lot of information to cover today, so I won't spend a ton of time on this ingress, but I will, I'm sure, loop back around to it in future episodes. So just stay tuned for that, my friends. Um, blah, blah, blah. Okay. In Libra, Mercury is dealing with ideas of balanced communication, understanding the needs of others, and practicing the art of diplomacy. Here, Mercury can learn to deliver their ideas through the beauty of language and spends more time kind of adjusting their communication style to create a sense of harmony and mutual benefit for those they are working with and speaking to. So, moving forward towards the later half of the week, maybe you will find some more flowery language coming through and maybe ideas of diplomacy and again, creating win-win situations in our communication will sort of move to the surface. And I love a win-win situation. So, keeping this rolling on Thursday, September the 18th, Mercury, having just entered into the cardinal air sign of Libra, opposes Neptune, who is retrograde in Aries. This is occurring at 0 degrees and 53 arc minutes of these cardinal signs. So, as soon as Mercury enters Libra, they form this opposition to Neptune. Currently, Mercury is sort of moving between Neptune and Saturn, helping us to sort of process the Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which came within a hair's width of perfection back in July, and then Saturn station retrograde, and Saturn has since retrograded back into Pisces, kind of releasing that tension a little bit, even though it's like all around us. And Saturn and Neptune will finally complete their conjunction on February 20th of 2026. And so now we're getting a little bit of space, and Mercury is kind of moving between them and helping us to sort of process this conjunction conjunction as they contact both of these planets individually, but also what their vibe is like together. And so Mercury deals with how we process information and the mental filters that we have that helps us to construct or understand our reality in the world. And as the and now they are shifting between both Saturn and Neptune, helping us to kind of process this conjunction. And they provide information that helps us to understand the way that this conjunction might manifest in our personal lives, as well, and our internal landscape, as well as in our external world. And so currently, like I said, Saturn and Neptune are separating from their very near conjunction in July when they were just 13 degrees apart. And then Saturn has returned back to Pisces on September the 1st, and Neptune is still in the very early degrees of Aries until October the 22nd. And so now we have a little bit of distance between Saturn and Neptune, these two heavy hitting planets. And for the as for the time being, they are separated by sign. And so we get kind of like a little bit of a different flavor between them. And so as Mercury opposes both of them this week in different signs, we might get a chance to understand their unique flavor just a little bit and begin to process the ways that Saturn and Neptune's conjunction might be impacting us. And so Saturn Neptune conjunctions tend to manifest in big ways through world or global events. Tends to dissolve boundaries and old structures, and it can create waves of belief or idealism that can sweep people up and wash them away. So as Mercury opposes Saturn, then Neptune, we get a little perspective on how the tidal wave of idealism or belief system may be forming. And we can step back and consider the ways in which we are pulled in or swept under, or the flotation devices that we can develop in order to weather the storm and keep ourselves from being washed away. Specifically, as Mercury perfects their opposition to Neptune, we may want to consider our personal belief system and how that lines up with or is in conflict with the beliefs that are gaining power in the world around us. And we can consider how our mental filter is functioning and what are these settings that we are using to filter the world and to make sense of things. Mercury is our thought processes, and Neptune is pretty confusing and foggy. So this opposition can create delusions and kind of lend itself to fantastical thinking. This is a great transit for conspiracy theories, especially with Mercury coming off the opposition to Saturn, who represents stark reality. And cold, hard reality can be pretty difficult to handle because oftentimes it can make us feel really powerless. And as Mercury opposes Neptune, reality can feel a lot more malleable, and thoughts may spiral out into fantastical or magical thinking. And we may find ourselves trying to make sense of or gain a feeling of power over events and situations that feel out of our control by creating, murder boards and string going to things and being like, oh, I figured it out. I found the solution. I cracked the code. I broke the matrix. And so if you break the matrix, more power to you. And also just watch out for tumbling down rabbit holes because Neptune can be definitely delusional and can be like outright lies. So just try and keep one foot in the Saturnian reality when you're, chasing rabbits down a hole. So either way, this is a great day for, this is not a great day for clear and logical thinking. This is a better day for creative writing or spiritual connection. With Mercury, the messenger, moving between Saturn and Neptune, this may be a good opportunity to take some time for yourself, to not look at social media or the news, and just practice tuning into yourself and just noticing your own inner alignment. As the storm of media rages and information is flying all around, pulling us out of connection with ourselves, it can be really easy to be swept away. And this might be an excellent time to reconnect with our spiritual core and our inner knowing and to reorient to the place of what feels true and authentic as independent from the chaos of the external world. Taking this time to reconnect with the self will also be really helpful as we move towards the end of the week and the partial solar eclipse on Saturday, which is, eclipses are pretty fraught. They're pretty chaotic. It's both endings and beginnings happening simultaneously, which can be a little overwhelming. And the more that we're able to tune into our inner alignment, the better we are able and the more resourced we'll be to weather the storm and be able to like navigate this space of chaos and upheaval and the sort of fragmentation of the eclipse experience. So, also Thursday, September the 18th. Mercury in Libra, excuse me, Mercury in Libra trine Uranus retrograde in Gemini. This is happening at 1 degree and 23 arc minutes. So Mercury moves off the opposition to Neptune and they form a supportive trine to Uranus. And this can help us to find innovative solutions to issues that we are facing. Mercury trine Uranus can assist us in thinking outside of the box and help us to gain radical new perspectives on the situations that we are dealing with. Uranus is the planet of revolution and change. It is striving for the idealized vision that exists beyond the realistic structure of Saturn. It helps us to move beyond existing systems and to create something radically different. The trine to Mercury this trine to Mercury is quick. Mercury is moving very fast right now and probably will not result in any sudden sweeping change, but it does give us a glimpse into new ideas and allows us to touch into this space of possibility, which can provide us with these seeds of inspiration that we can sow during this transit and moving forward, which can also take root during this charged eclipse time. And we can continue to tend these new insights moving forward so that they can grow into something more substantial. Again, taking some space to connect in with your inner world while Mercury is opposing Saturn and then Neptune on Wednesday. And Thursday can help us to really create the conditions for inspiration to arise. This is and if I lost you all on Instagram, I'm going to say that again. Taking space for ourselves can help us to create the conditions for inspiration to arise. And I think that this is really important because inspiration and insight can be very subtle and fickle. Uranus is associated with this idea of the genius, which traditionally was not like a person. It wasn't Einstein. It wasn't Picasso. There were no people who were geniuses. The genius was an independent spirit who would fly around and went where it was welcome. And if we are visited by the genius and we are too busy scrolling on our phones or preoccupied with some resentment that we are grinding and trying to figure out how to get back at this person, we may forget to welcome the genius and provide a space for them to land. And if we don't welcome them in and there's no place for them to be, or they whisper their insight to us and we don't listen, they will just take off and go to another place where they can be received and where they might feel welcome. So Thursday might be a really good time to create some space for connection with the self and to create a place where the genius can feel welcome. And so we can tap into the spirit of inspiration if it chooses to appear. And if not, you probably didn't lose anything by tuning into your inner world and spending a little less time on your devices. And if it does work, then maybe there's a new idea that begins to take shape, or the seed of a new idea that begins to blossom, or a flash of inspiration that we're able to write down and take a quick note of that we can begin to practice moving forward. Which brings us to Friday, September the 19th. We have, excuse me, we have Mercury in Libra, trine Pluto, retrograde in Aquarius. This is going down at 1 degree and 30 arc minutes. Whew. So Friday, Mercury continues on with their busy schedule and rounds out their contact with all of the outer planets. as they come into a supportive trine with Pluto. This is sort of like Mercury's Grand Prix going and meeting all of the outer planets, which is, that's a pretty packed schedule. That's a busy week. That is a lot of information to process because the outer planets are sort of global and transpersonal and beyond the self. And so there is a lot of information that is coming to us from these sort of larger forces or archetypal forces that exist beyond ourselves. These exist in the internal world, in the unconscious, in the realm of sort of collective consciousness. And so, ways that you can support your nervous system this week, getting good sleep or like caring for yourself might be important because there's a lot of information coming in. So Mercury, as the messenger, is the only Olympian god who can go into the underworld and return safely. And because of that, Mercury has kind of a special connection with Pluto. They even share the helmet of invisibility, which Mercury borrows from time to time from Pluto to allow them to take care of business. And so, underworld gods like Pluto, I think, tend to be pretty lonely. No one really wants to hang out with them. Definitely no one wants to go over and like kick it in their apartment. And they rarely get invited to parties, and rarely can they leave the underworld because it's their job to take care of the dead. And that is kind of a full-time operation. So, a supportive aspect for Mercury, who is not afraid of the underworld, can feel pretty good for the chthonic deity like Pluto, who must probably get pretty bored watching over the dead all the dang time. And so one of Mercury's jobs is as the psychopomp, and they bring souls of the dead into the underworld. In this capacity, they they allow us access to the buried or underworld material, internal information, hidden secrets, buried treasure. All of these can be revealed through Mercury's trine to Pluto. Mercury can kind of help us navigate these underworld spaces to provide access to information that kind of lays dormant in the unconscious. Mercury can help this hidden information come into consciousness, whether it's through news stories breaking out in the big world, or through accessing memories, remembering dreams, or tapping into parts of ourselves that have lain dormant for a while. There's valuable information that can be discovered if we are able to follow the god of the crossroads down beneath the surface of the known world and into the subterranean realms of Hades. Pluto is also associated with treasure and riches. And this is because everything of great value on Earth comes from the Earth. Gold, platinum, diamonds, oil, etc. These are all found in the Earth and in Pluto's realm. So Pluto also guards the treasure of inner wisdom, which requires a quest into one's unconscious and into one's personal underworld to retrieve. Mercury as the psychopomp helps to guide us into this realm so that we can tap into the rich knowledge that lives buried beneath the surface of the conscious mind deep in our unconscious realms. And Mercury helps us to retrieve a little of this and carry it into the light where it can become integrated into our conscious life. And we can benefit from the knowledge if we that we have retrieved from these sort of dark caverns of our personal underworld. And, this isn't the easiest thing in the world, but there is great benefit and great wealth in this if we are able to surrender to that journey and stay open to that journey and allow ourselves to be led into some of the more shadowy spaces that we might gain access to moving towards the end of the week. Okay, still Friday, September the 19th. We have Venus entering Virgo. And Venus will be in Virgo until October the 13th when they enter into their home sign of Libra. Okay, so as Venus enters into Virgo, they come into a sign where they are in what is traditionally known as their fall. And a planet in its fall has a difficult time expressing itself and getting its needs met. And one of the things that I've heard about a planet in its fall is that its sort of skills and what comes easy to it sort of get used against it. It's sort of in a hole. And every time Venus tries to use her charms or any of the Venusian qualities that she's so good at, kind of digs herself deeper. That's pretty frustrating. And so one of Venus's problems is in Virgo is that it can get caught up in perfectionism. It can feel like this painting could be better, or this meal could be cooked better, or could be more flavorful, or this fabric could be softer, or this relationship is good, but maybe it's missing something, or this partner is almost the person of my dreams, but they are lacking something. So in Virgo, Venus's love of beauty and connection can be turned against them, and they can become kind of overly critical. And instead of appreciating what's right in front of them, they may find themselves nitpicking or wishing for something else, something that checks a few more boxes instead of what I'm actually experiencing in this moment. And they may be looking for something that may be more perfect than the reality that they're actually living in. And this is a really hard way to be. On the upside, Venus is now in what's called mutual reception. Mutual reception is when two planets are in each other's signs. So for example, Mercury is in Venus's sign of Libra, and Venus is in Mercury's sign of Virgo. So they are in mutual reception. They're, staying at each other's houses. And so, they are able to kind of resource each other in this unique way. And there is some mutual aid and support going on between these two planets. And so, with this relationship occurring, it's a reminder that it's okay to ask for help. If we find ourselves spinning out, if nothing is meeting our standards, if the details are getting us bogged down, this is a great time to ask for assistance and get another opinion or another set of eyes on our situation. And I'll talk more about Venus and Virgo and their relationship with Mercury as the weeks move on, but we've still got some more ground to cover because, again, this is a pretty hectic week. So, moving right along to Saturday, September the 20th, we have Venus in Virgo square Uranus retrograde in Gemini. This is going on at 1 degree and 22 minutes of these mutable signs. Whew. So, as Venus moves into Virgo, they come into a challenging square with Uranus, the planet of breakdown, breakthrough, radical change, and freedom. Uranus is a sky god, again, existing beyond the realm of Saturnian reality. Uranus is striving for the ideal, the perfect form, that vision that is untainted by the constraints of the real. Venus in Virgo is also looking for that sense of perfection, the thing that checks all the boxes. Venus in Virgo can be kind of Goldilocks like, always seeking for that thing that is just right. When Venus in Virgo squares Uranus in Gemini, we may find ourselves becoming fixated on the ideal, becoming disappointed by what's presented to us in the physical plane. Uranus is looking to be free and really to honor its unfettered authenticity. Constraints of relationships or responsibilities may cause Uranus to rebel and want to break out of commitments or blow up structures that we have found ourselves in. And this transit can really bring up a grass is always greener feeling. And this grass is always greener feeling is the feeling of craving in a nutshell. And craving tells a story that I am not all right where I am or who I am, and that I need something else to make me all right or to make it better. And while this belief can motivate change and innovation, it can also prevent us from being present and working with what we've got and really appreciating our experience of the moment. We may notice tensions coming up in relationships around this time. And so just watch out for focusing too much on the details and the little things that aren't perfect, and just see if we can shift into a different perspective and allow some acceptance. And, if it isn't right, it isn't right. But don't create problems where there aren't any. And we may want to really consider the story of Goldilocks here. And while it's really good to strive for the thing that feels just right, we may end up rejecting things that can sustain and support us in the quest for that idealized perfection. And in the end of the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, she is confronted and in some retellings eaten by the bears just because she got too comfortable in the just rightness and too kind of focused on the just rightness. So, just saying, something to consider and watch out for. Okay, still on Saturday, September the 20th, we have the Sun in Virgo opposing Saturn retrograde in Pisces. This going down at 28 degrees and 30 arc minutes. And so the Saturn opposition to the Sun will be in full effect during Sunday's new moon solar eclipse. And the Sun deals with our aspirations and our unique sense of self. This is me. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to shine my light. Saturn represents reality and the limit of what's possible. Saturn can also show up as external authority. And it is the other, the system, the structure that we may feel prevents us from becoming who we strive to be or doing what we really want. So with this transit, we may notice the external structures that may feel are limiting us and preventing us from our sense of self-expression. And this can be incredibly frustrating. One of the things that happens in an opposition with Saturn is we tend to outsource our responsibility and authority onto external forces. I can't do this because that person or system is stopping me. And this may be very well and true, but with the Sun's opposition to Saturn, we want to consider the ways that we can reclaim our sense of authority instead of outsourcing it onto somebody else, or instead of blaming external conditions for our situations. And again, external conditions may very well be playing a major role in our current circumstances, but we want to consider the places where we are giving our power over to external authority figures like politicians, police, bosses, parents, etc. And we can think about where we might have influence and agency to begin to express ourselves and create a reality that is more in line with our inner authenticity. And I think the key piece in this Saturn opposition is how do we reclaim our authority? How do we notice the places where, oh, I've given my authority to the boss? Good morning, Gina Maria. Nice to see you. How do we, reclaim the places where we have like outsourced our authority onto external figures, and how do we reclaim that for ourselves and really claim our authority and our agency to really be able to express ourselves and to show up in authentic ways? And so another perspective on all of this is Saturn makes things real through dedication and commitment. Saturn asks us what we are willing to show up for and what we are willing to put the work in to make real. As the Saturn as the Saturn opposition is all up in the solar eclipse, there's the opportunity to really consider the reality that we are constructing and how that reality can come into better alignment with our inner spiritual wisdom as represented by the sun. We might want to think about how we would like our reality to look, both individually and collectively, and ask ourselves, what are we willing to commit to begin shaping and creating this reality? So that brings us finally to the last transit of the week, Sunday, September the 21st. We have a new moon partial solar eclipse in Virgo occurring at 29 degrees and 5 arc minutes of that mutable Earth sign. This is a south node eclipse happening at the spooky old anaretic degree of Virgo. And so this eclipse will be opposing Saturn, also opposing Neptune, kind of out of sign, but still within a degree. Will also be trine Uranus and trine Pluto, again out of sign, but still within a degree or so. And so, yeah, this brings us finally to this new moon partial solar eclipse on Sunday. And this is the last transit of the week and the last eclipse in the set of eclipses in the Pisces Virgo axis for this eclipse season. And I believe the Pisces Virgo eclipses will continue on until 2027, something like that. And so this eclipse is happening at the very last degree of Virgo on the south node. And the last degree of any sign is known as the anaretic degree, which is considered to be a little fraught and a tad bit haunted. And so the anaretic degree is a pretty charged place where we are at the very edge of a specific reality, the edge of the reality of a specific sign. We're both looking forward into the unknown space of what might come next and looking back to kind of review everything that we have experienced leading up to this moment. So, in the last degrees of a sign, we were asked to kind of go over what was asked of us and to consider the experiences that were presented to us and the lessons that we were asked to learn. And this becomes the last chance in some ways to wrap up the loose ends in a sign and to integrate the information that we have gathered before we make the leap into the next sign of the zodiac. Oh, that's right. Yeah, Gina Maria, this eclipse is going to be happening right on your sun. Mazel tov. That's it's pretty intense to have an eclipse occurring on one of the personal planets, especially the sun or the moon. But it's also an opportunity to shake things up, opportunity to release old patterns, the opportunity to begin new things. And I think eclipses bring in a lot of the sense of ending and beginning, and these kind of happen simultaneously during an eclipse, calling in and a letting go. And that's part of the reason that eclipses feel so charged and dysregulating because we're being asked to like begin and end at the same time or let go and grab on at the same time, which can be, yeah, like Gina Maria saying, can make life pretty intense. Um, good luck to you out there. I will hold you in my prayers. So, in Virgo, the lessons that are presented to us, in this eclipse again happening at 29 degrees Virgo. So the lessons that are being presented to us deal with issues of discernment, analysis, and perfectionism. And are we holding ourselves or others to way too high a standard? And how are we able to decide what is the right thing for us? How do we practice discernment? How do we practice discernment skillfully? How do we practice analysis skillfully? How do we practice criticism skillfully? How do we break down complex situations into more manageable pieces? How do we digest our experiences? And what are we choosing to work with and refine until it reaches its highest possible potential? And then how are we able to use whatever it is that we've chosen to refine or perfect in practical ways in the service of others? Ultimately, I think Virgo is seeking to bring the spirit down into physical matter and to be able to share the gifts that this spiritual awareness brings when it touches the earth and finds form. So, this eclipse is occurring on the south node, which is a place of letting go and a place of decrease. It's also a place of sorrow because decrease and release tend to imply loss, which can bring up feelings of grief. With this eclipse, we are asked to let go and to surrender. In Virgo, we may consider some of the rituals and routines that we have been using to help us navigate life and how these may have run their course. Some of these rituals and routines and habits and practices may need to be released in order to make space for new structures to take shape that can help us to create our preferred reality moving forward. We may want to examine the places of perfectionism or criticism to consider, are these things actually serving me? Criticism can be beneficial and constructive in helping something to achieve its best possible expression, which is great, but it can also serve to separate us from embodied experience and connection by allowing us to live in our heads and to just be breaking something down and analyzing it instead of actually experiencing it or, dare I say it, raising it up. And all too often, that critical voice becomes internalized and turned against ourselves. And we can all be our own harshest critic. We may have gotten comfortable in this self-critical cycle where we never allow ourselves to step out of our comfort zone or to take a risk because before we can, we have already cut ourselves to shreds and decided it was a terrible idea and why even bother. We also might find ourselves, uh, and so we may find ourselves continuing to play out old patterns. We might want to consider what is no longer working, what has already run its course, what do I already know how to do, or what has become unconscious at this point. I just show up and do it because this is the program that's running under the surface. And so, in what ways can I shift and maybe release or let go or untangle to create a little bit more space in order to develop new habits, new patterns, and new practices in my life that can bring me closer to who I want to be and what I actually want to do? We can think about this in terms of sacrifice, which means to make sacred. What can I offer up? What can I make sacred in order to create more space for me to shift my reality? And so traditionally, a solar eclipse was thought of as the death of a king. And I'm not talking about this in any sort of external political world, but here the Sun King is swallowed up and goes into the underworld to be reborn on the other side. The old king who has, lost the sort of life force and the energy that is required to make the crops grow, becomes sacrificed and is reborn as the new Sun King, who comes with the vitality to create new life. And so, as the old king is sacrificed, it allows new energy to enter into the system. And we can think about this on a personal level as the old ego structure that is clinging to habituated patterns and survival adaptations and ego identities as being sacrificed so it can be reborn and renewed that as something that is more in line with the current moment that can provide the vitality for something new to grow and to take root and something maybe more able to adapt and develop along the lines of where we would like to go moving forward, instead of just trying to survive what we have experienced in the past and clinging on to the practices that we have developed out of, necessity or survival strategies or the things that we have just figured out, okay, this works. I'm going to just keep doing this ad nauseum forever and ever and ever. And this is a real chance to step back and be like, okay, like, let me kind of analyze and discern what I'm working with, the habits of my life, the patterns that I'm living out, the routines that I'm engaged in, and are these developed out of a survival necessity that came a long time ago, that was developed a long time ago that I'm still using because it worked once, so what the hell? Or do we want to step back and examine this and be like, okay, is there something new that can be implemented? Can I let go of some of these patterns that may have run their course or served their purpose in order to call in a new routine, a new structure, a new habit that can actually help me shift the course of my life to move in better alignment with who I want to be and where I would like to go? And so a South Node eclipse can help us reveal some of these old habituated patterns that we continue to engage in. And it asks us to let go and break that cycle. We may find that some things come to their natural completion, while in other areas we may need to choose or to let go or to shift directions. And so, with this eclipse opposing Saturn, we might really want to consider the new structures or frameworks that we would like to introduce to replace old, outdated patterns. And we might want to consider the reality that we want to create for ourselves and what work is being asked of us or required in order for us to achieve that. And with that, my friends, we have come to the end of yet another exciting edition of This Week in Space. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And yep, Diane saying letting go and letting go and letting go. And also remember, practice makes practice. let go and like practice letting go and practice letting go and practice letting go and just seeing what you're left with, seeing what has the most value, seeing what feels the most authentic. And again, this is a great week. It's a lot going on, but a great week for really sort of letting go of the layers that we have built up upon ourselves and really trying to tune into that inner authentic awareness, because that becomes the orientation point that will help us to navigate the storm of these eclipses, of the Saturn Neptune conjunction, and of the chaos that is unfolding in the world around us. And that sort of inner alignment can be that. I don't know, that rock that we can hold to and trust, right? We can always trust that inner authentic alignment much more than we can these sort of talking heads and the external voices and the news media and the endless scrolling. So any way that you have, or any way that you can implement to really practice tuning into yourself, even if it's just a quick check-in in the morning, quick check-in in the night. Hey, how am I doing? Okay, what do I need in this moment? Okay, where is that like inner sense of alignment? I think that practicing that, something as simple as that, can really help us to kind of weather the storm and navigate the chaos of the world around us. And so, with that, my friends, that is all the astro weather that is fit to print. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you all. If you like this, and you know somebody else might like it, go ahead and send it to them. It's good to get this out there and to spread the word. And it would be nice for this to reach anyone who y'all think could benefit from it. You can find this on YouTube at Camp Wizard Camp. It also comes out as a podcast on wherever you get your podcasts at This Week in Space with 3 exclamation points, not to be confused with This Week in Space with 0 exclamation points. I don't even know what they're thinking. And yeah, other than that, I'm available for tarot and astrology readings. I also do astrological coaching. I am kind of on a world travel at the moment, but I will be returning to my wizard lair around first week of October. So if you're interested in getting some insight into your personal chart, or getting a tarot reading, or working with some of the planets in your chart, or some of the transits on an ongoing basis, you can check out my website, campwizardcamp.com, or hit me up on Instagram at Blind Stallion Space Wizard and just let me know that what you're interested in, and we can find a time to meet. Other than that, yeah, I wish you all a great week in space and a very happy and safe solar eclipse. And yeah, I will be back at you all next week. I'm going to be running a retreat, I believe, next Monday, but I will find a time to go live, and I'll try and give you all a little bit of heads up, and I'll just keep cranking out this show as best I can while I am doing my Sagittarian international travels. So, again, good to see everybody, and be well out there. And till next time, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, may the force be with you. Bye now. Ooh, yeah.